Let's start. Couple seconds. And hello, developers. Welcome to Elixir Pro. My name is Gustavo. Most of the people call me Gus. And in this series, you're going to learn how to build an amazing API using Elixir. And we're going to learn more about REST and some ways to think about Elixir and how it works. I hope you enjoy and learn a lot of this course. Okay, so let's start. And I have some recommendations to you to start keeping this project updates. Most of the time, I recommend you to follow some instructions, and I'm going to prepare some materials and a book probably, and I will share with you, and then you can keep following the material and the contents, okay? So first of all, I'm gonna share my screen. And there you go. And now I started creating a project using Phoenix. I will give you the commands and some instructions. Let's start thinking about approach. So first, I recommend you to follow all those instructions, all the commands that I am executing now, because you can probably have different dependencies or another problems with your application. So I'm trying to avoid you to get problems in this series, okay? One of the things that I did, and I strongly recommend you to do, is you have to install on your local machine to start to create this project. First, I'm gonna prepare this material. Gonna use the Notion table of contents here, and then we're gonna start our first class. So what do you need to install on your local machine? So first, requirements. I recommend you to have in your local machine Elixir, Phoenix, VS Code, Docker, especially to create. I like using Docker, especially to create my databases like Postgres. So I created this database over here. I strongly recommend you to follow this pattern, but at least I recommend you to install the Postgres on your local machine. And I've tried to avoid to change the password that Elixir creates for you. So just follow the instructions that I will give you. And another thing that you need is Git. And you need to at least know the basic structs using Elixir. Basic of Elixir. So this is what you need to follow this course, because I'm not gonna teach you basic topics about Elixir. That's why I'm explaining to you to learn a little bit more about Elixir, the syntax, and about functional programming, and then start this course, okay? So one of the things that I recommend you as well is to create the project like I created. So I execute some commands here to create the project. I would recommend you to follow those steps that I'm gonna give to you. First, I'm gonna open my terminal, and this is the project that I created. I executed this command and give you. This is the command that I executed. Mix phx .new backend -- binary ID, and I will explain to you why I executed this command using the binary ID. So I'm gonna open my terminal over here. When I execute mix phx Mix phx.new better. So you will see a lot of instructions about Elixir and how to build your Phoenix application. So one of the things that you're gonna see is how to create an umbrella application using the OTP name application module as well. You can choose the database. Most of the time, this is a default for Elixir. We use the Postgres. Another thing, you can remove the assets, Acto, HTML, get text, dashboard, and you can use now, it's a default in Elixir, to create your application using the live view, and live view is a default when you create your application. And we executed this command, which is provide to us a way to create primary key using binary ID, which is really great, and I like this a lot. I'm not going to explain to you about the no HTML and another structs like to remove the act or the dashboard. I'm going to create a default application. And after I create a default application, I strongly recommend you to follow some steps. One of them is to open my terminal over here, is to create one repo on your local on your GitHub. So here I created this repo over here, which are called Backend. And after I created this repo, what I did was just commit my code, and I pushed my code as well. And then I created another branch that I called class one. This is an alias that I have to execute mixsteps.get. So I executed the dependencies. And what I did as well was execute the document mixcoveralls.html. And I'm going to explain everything to you. This time that I separated for us is to explain some things that I usually do when I create Elixir applications. And don't worry about it, but it's really important you start your project with a high quality in the beginning. So for me, this is really important in most of the project that I worked, and I did those steps that I'm gonna give to you. I have most of the projects I have a lot of success. I could create tests easily following those steps that I'm gonna explain to you. So here that I executed, most of the time when I create projects using Elixir, I install at least 3 of these plugins over here: Credo, Coveralls, and Mix Test underscore watch, and I will explain to you all of them. This one, we're gonna check the quality about our code. The Coveralls will provide for us a report about our tests. And mix underscore test underscore watch, we can create our application using TDD and not spend a lot of time executing mix space test, mix test, which is so boring. And this one makes my day when I work using Elixir very productive. So I like a lot of this plugin. So I'm gonna give you some configurations that I did, and I am creating a book, a PDF for you, and I will provide to you probably using the Telegram. I'm going to provide the book for you. And here, this is one of the scripts that I'm creating. I use this script to use the Credo a lot, which is really great. Let me just copy this script and provide to you over here. So here, I'm going to create a topic called scripts. Now, this is the script, and the file name will be credo.exs. So I don't know if I can update this file, but what I can do I can provide to you my GitHub URL right now, which is github.com elxpro slash backend. And then you can check in my branch that I will provide to you right now, those scripts to follow those tutorials. So another thing that I usually do is create coveralls.json. I skip some files, which is not necessary to um, see in my test. So I most of the time I do it, and I will provide this one as well on the scripts. Coveralls, coveralls.json. And there you go. So this is the one of the steps that I create when I start creating projects. So another thing is I executed the command uh, coveralls.html. This is going to provide for us a report. So when I open this report over here, let me show you. So we have this report. If I executed this command again, but removing this script over here, let me show you what's going to happen. Okay, we have a fail. Let me just create an empty JSON over here, see if it's gonna work. And there you go. Now we have 42% coverage. When I refresh the page, I'm gonna see a lot of files. And most of the time, we're not gonna create that for those files that I recommend you to skip. So that's why I'm gonna show you, because you start this material with some recommendations that I'm giving to you. So that's why I'm showing all of those steps over here. Another thing is when I create those steps and prepare the coverage, another thing that I would like to show you is that if I go to X, overalls Elixir, for this file, this dependencies over here, I recommend you to include this piece of code over here. And another thing that I recommend to you is that if you check our file, when I go back and roll back the code over here to coveralls.json and execute mixcoveralls.html, cool. You will see that the router, it is not tested right now. And one of the things that we're gonna do is just skip this piece of code. And to do that, you only need to go to xcoveralls, find for ignore lines. You can copy this example over here. Go to our lib folder, backend router. And now you only need to include this piece of code over here. And I want to finish to ignore my tests here. And then I just change start to stop. When I do that, what's gonna happen is we're gonna increase more coverage in our application. I know that we don't have information to provide that we are testing, but most of the time we don't need to test that. So now we have 87%. So if I refresh the code, you will see that the API is not tested. And before I explain to you how to create APIs using the Elixir, I'm gonna navigate through the project, show to you the folders, show how Elixir works, show to you how supervisor, dynamic supervisor works. Probably I'm not gonna explain to you supervisor and dynamic supervisors, but I'm gonna give you an introduction to understand more about how Elixir works. Okay. So before we start and I navigate through the project, I'm gonna execute ex-s mix phx.server, which is gonna start our application. It's gonna compile the code probably. Unfortunately, I did not execute this command before we start recording, so it can be a problem. And to work around and waiting while it's gonna start our application, I'm gonna provide you some explanation how Elixir works. Okay. So let me close all those files. I'm gonna commit this code. Here, let me just remove this one, which is not necessary for me. And now let's commit. I'm gonna show to you all those files over here. So this one is our Credo script to validate our code. Another one is the coveralls.json and mix.exs, mix.lock, and our router, which is just this piece of code ignoring our tests. Let me commit this one. And now let me prepare a message. You can call improve quality. And now our application is already started. Let me open my terminal. Localhost 4000. So now I started my Elixir application and I'm gonna provide you some explanation. How did we get this result? And to get this result, I'm gonna show you how Elixir works. And you probably will see this kind of error message with process ID and timeout. I need to create database as well. So here I already have my Postgres started using the Docker. And one of the things that I'm gonna do is just execute the command mix-ecto.create. How Elixir provide this command for us? So if you go to mix.exs, you will see that we have the command, we have the aliases here. This is a quick explanation how it works. Mix setup, it's going to execute mixsteps.get. Mixecto.setup is going to execute the command that I executed right now, which is mixecto.create. Ecto.migrate to execute migrations. I'm gonna provide and explain to you later how it works. Ecto.reset and those commands that you can see over here. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any question. And now, when I execute again mix phx.server, And there you go. As you can see, I don't receive error message anymore. But to start explaining how Phoenix works, as you can see, if I refresh the page, I can see my page normally. Um, but if I stop my application, go to my backlib folder, backend application, and just comment this piece of code over here, the line 18, backend.add endpoint, and execute again mixphx.server. So my application is already started, but you can see some difference. When I started my application with the children backend endpoint, as you can see, we have the access to localhost 4000, but here I just have my IX terminal over here. And if I try to access my application, it doesn't work. This is because when you create an Elixir application using the Phoenix, Phoenix will provide to you a way to handle with the database and to handle with your web application. And here, what we have is a supervisor, and then we have the backend and the endpoint over here, which is how we start receiving endpoints using the HTTP or HTTPS. So if I find this module over here, as you can see, we have in a lot of places, but to find the module, I strongly recommend you to find for this one. And as you can see, we have a file called endpoint inside my backend folder, backend underscore web folder. And as you can see, we have use Phoenix endpoint, and then we'll have the OTTP name. I'm sorry, OTP name. And we started having some configurations about the session, about our live view sockets. I can't give you a deeply explanation now because I would spend a lot of time, but I recommend you to study this file when you have time. This one, we are gonna provide how to read the assets, fonts, image, five icon, and robots .txt. This one we provide a live reload. This one we provide loggers, request ID, telemetry. But the most important is how can we get our URLs. So you can see that we have a plug called backend router. And if I go to this file over here, this module, sorry, as you can see, we have this file, router.ex. And then we have the backend web.router. And as you can see, we have a pipeline to start creating a browser application. And we have a pipeline to start creating our APIs. When you go to the root, to the index, basically, which is on the slash, we go to our page controller index over here, and then we start our application. Does that make sense? Let me know if you guys have any question. And now we already have the process here, and I'm gonna explain to you what is a connection. I'm gonna show to you a connection before we start creating APIs. So one of the things that I'm gonna do is just go to our router. So as you can see, we have the scope And this is our slash, only slash. I can change this one, for example, pumpkin. Let me show you what's gonna happen. This is an alias. IMS is an alias to ix-s mix phx.server. So let me execute my application again. And now, if I try to access my application, localhost, as you can see, it's impossible. But when I move to Pumpkin over here, so this is going to give us what's the URLs that we have. So when I change to Pumpkin, as you can see, our application is running. And another thing, let's talk a little bit about the process and how it works and how Elixir works. I'm gonna roll back this piece of code. But here, as you can see, we have the scope. After the scope, we have an alias, which is how we are going to start our module. And then we have the page controller. So if I want to find this file over here, and what's the module name of the whole module name, we can check for this one, backend dot page controller, and find the function called index. So let's go ahead and see. And then we'll have page underscore controller. And then we'll have our index file over here. If you see, when you have the router, after we create the module, every time we have something like use backend web, and then we have an atom called router. If you go to page controller, we have the same way, but using the controller over here. If you go to the views, we will see the same, like page view, using the view over here as well. So this is because it's an alias to start creating HTML files, but it's the same concepts you use REST API as well, and you're going to understand a little bit more, after I explain those pieces of code over here. So now I'm just going to create a variable over here to show how process works. So here, what I'm going to do is just include a new variable called process underscore ID. This is going to be our process ID, which is going to be self Erlang to list. I think this is the command Erlang. Let me show you. Let me check over here. Self is my process ID. Erlang to what is that? I think it is Erlang, probably. List to feed, I think. Or feed to list. And then I think it's string to so here with feed to list, and again I think it's going to be string char Remote to stream, I think. There you go. So this is how we are gonna get our process ID. Our process ID will be this one. And let me show you one thing real quick, and then we're gonna start creating our APIs. So here we will have our process ID. I'm gonna remove everything that we have on this page and creating this process ID. When we refresh the page, not pumpkin, but index page. As you can see, our process ID is 647. So if I use the observer over here, dot start, I'm gonna show you how can you can get the connection and how Elixir is so performatic. Doo-doo-doo. What's gonna happen? Okay, this is gonna open our application. So if you go to process and find for 647, and let me check if it's possible to get. I don't know if I lost the connection. Let me try again, refreshing the page. So our connection is this 1588. Or I'm losing the connection. So I think it's this one. 1588. What's happening? Well, when we are using the live view, this is gonna be so much more easy. For it's have been difficult to find this one using um, normal application. When you use the live view, it is easier. So when I click on this process here, basically what you're gonna find is that a process ID with a state, and inside the state we will see all the process communication, and you will see that you have your application, something like this one, endpoint, and the supervisors is handle with that, and we have the repo to handle with the database. So let me know if you have any questions about all those communications. And now we are ready to start creating our API, and I'm gonna give you some secrets what I do to create APIs. So let me just commit this code over here. Show process ID. There you go. And now I'm gonna close this one, and let's start creating our first API and how it works. So you understood how the application works, but one of the things that I usually do is start using TDD always, most of the time, because Elixir provide us amazing tools to start to use the TDD, and you can create those your application using TDD with Elixir really easy. So to start creating your application, you will see that you'll have a folder called test over here. Then you'll have backend underscore web, and then you'll have your controllers. I'm gonna explain to you how you can start testing. So one of the things that I'm gonna do is mix test. and then I will test. I'm gonna navigate using the test folder, backend, controllers, category underscore controller, underscore test, exs. This is gonna execute the test just one time. What I usually do is provide a way to execute the test every time that I need. So that's why I use and I love to use mixtest.watch, which is an amazing plugin. In my opinion, this is the best one, to be honest. This is gonna start executing my tests. And I want to see the errors. And now, as you can see, the first error is about the path, saying that the direction does not match. So let's start providing this file for this test and start creating our test. So here, what we are gonna do is create the file, which is inside the category, controllers folder, called category underscore controller underscore test exs. When I do it, my test is gonna rerun again. And now we have zero failures, but we don't have our test. So we need to provide our test. I strongly recommend you to read about a little bit more about the test, but I'm gonna provide you an introduction to start thinking about tests using Phoenix and Elixir. So here we're gonna create a def module, a module, which is gonna be back and web dot category controller, the module that we're going to test, and we are going to provide after controller test. And if you go to our support files over here, as you can see, we have a way. I strongly recommend you to read more about how it works, but it provides us a way to test connections. So we're gonna use this module to start testing our application. So here, and then we can start describing our test list. And then our first test is going to be a list of categories. And after that, I will explain to you how the connection case works. So if you go to this module and go to the bottom, as you can see, this provides to us a setup tags, and it will provide to us a way to create a connection, to test the connection, everything that you need to start testing a connection. And one of the things that it provides to us is a connection. So if I go to my file, I include a comma over here, and after including the comma, connection and connection, we already have our test. Let's make this one false, just to show you how it works. It's running our tests. So now what's happened is that our test is failing, but the most important things here that you can keep in mind is the communication between our test and this module. So if I go to this one and just replace connection to pumpkin, let's see what's gonna happen. It's running. me rerun my test again. It's compiling. I'm gonna wait for a little while. And now our test is failing just because I changed the name over here. I'm gonna go to the rollback the code to connection, and I want to see at least it is working. And there you go. We have our first test failing. Let's start creating our first API. So Elixir use a lot REST in our language. So one of the things that we're going to create is a get. You have this function over here. If you access to probably Phoenix Contest, you'll see how you can create your tests, and you probably will see this function over here. So here we need to pass our connection and the directory and the path about our URL path. So I'm gonna create our URL path, which is going to be API categories. We're not gonna pass params. This is our first URL, and we're gonna use the assert JSON response will be our connection that we have now, 200 equals, and this is gonna return for us, hi, my first API using Elixir. So this is our task. Let's make this one pass. And now this is complaining that the route, no route found, API categories. How can we provide this path to Elixir? One of the ways to provide this one, you need to open the folder called backend underscore web router. And after that, we will have our get, but you need to pay attention about the scope. Here the scope is a slash, and I'm gonna provide a scope to use API slash API and provide our first resource. So this is gonna be API and then categories. We will call a module called category controller, and we will call the function category index. Let's see what's gonna happen now. Probably this error is gonna be changed. And now it's complaining that we have the backend category controller category, but it's undefined. And let's create this file now. So I'm gonna go ahead and creating this module. So I'm gonna create a file called category or controller.ex. Let's create the module. Module back and web.category controller, and then Let's see what's gonna happen again. Now we need to provide this function over here in init. But to provide this function, we could use the backend web over here. That's in the add-on called controller, as we saw a couple minutes ago. Let's check our test again. Let's run the test. Come on, please. Let me restart this one. This is still running. Now, as you can see, it's not complaining about our dot init function, but complaining about the index function. Let's create the function index. Every time when you create a connection, controller, you always send the connection, and we always send the params. I'm not gonna explain the params now, but let's start returning something like um, put status, okay, which is 200, and JSON will be an empty map. Let's see, let's take a look what's happening now in our test. Please run. It, it's compiling. And now, as you can see, the difference about our test and our API, that's the difference, the returns. Just gonna copy and paste over here and see how it works. Let's see our test passing and start consuming our APIs. And it's running and passing. Cool. Let's see if I call my API, it's gonna work if I use a REST services. So here, I'm gonna use the Thunder client over here. And I'm gonna create my first API. Here I'm gonna create a collection. And I will call my collection I don't know. I still don't know how to use this one. Import or reload new collection. Back ELX Pro backend. This is my collection, and I will create a new request, which is I'm gonna create a folder called categories. And inside my folder, I will create a new request, which is gonna be list all categories. So this is my first request. I'm gonna pass HTTP localhost 4000 API categories. Oops, what's happening? List all categories. Let me check. What's uh, I understand what's happening. I'm executing my test, but I did not start. I did not start my Elixir application. When I start my Elixir application, let's see what's gonna happen. And let's start sending a connection, a request using the GET. And there you go. We received the hi, my first API using Elixir. I know it's really simple, but I needed to explain to you how Elixir works and how to create APIs and how process works, how Dynamic Supervisor works, what is the flow to create our APIs before I created this API as you see. And now we're going to start moving faster. And this is our first API, our first class. I hope you enjoy. I'm just gonna make just two more updates over here, and then we are gonna finish our class. So here, one of the things that I usually do is execute the command mix format to format our code. And the another command is mix credo -- strict. And as you can see, this is recommend us some software design. I'm just going to move to this file over here. I will copy this echo.sandbox, create an alias, and then I'm gonna copy this alias because I'm gonna use this a lot. Remove this piece of code, move to a connection case, just paste the alias that I already created. Remove this piece of code over here. Now I'm gonna move to channel case as well. Create this piece of code. Remove the ecto over here. Execute again the credo. And then everything is passing. I will commit this piece of code over here calling credo. Limitations. This one is the process ID that I showed to you. Show process ID. Now, create our first API using PDE. I'm gonna push this code over here. Sprint as well. And cool. Hope you enjoyed this class today. Hope to see you the next Tuesday, and see you. Bye bye.